We have with us here Mr. Vineet Teradesai, CFO of Mindtree. So thank you, Vineet, for taking time out and being here with us today at the CFO Club. And I must say, looking at the experience, we are really privileged to have you. And you're, I think, one of the CFOs that I've seen who worked across different industries, and therefore the kind of diverse experience that you have, starting with ABP, then I see Bajaj Auto, Cognizant, HSBC, and now with Mindtree. And wherever you work, we've seen also growth. You've grown with the companies, and here too with Mindtree now. And you worked across different functions within finance. So what has been your success mantra as you have looked at different, industries?
Thank you, Preeta. First of all, season's greeting to all, to the Dun & Bradstreet family as well as to the viewers. I think so. The success mantra, if I had to really summarize it in a very 2 or 3 bullet points. One, I think so, is aligning and knowing your business. It's a very important thing. Many people say that, okay, I know my business. When I say I'm in IT services, there are different sets of IT services company. Are you into plain services, or are you into products, or what are you into platforms? Does platforms are reusable intellectual property content, or they are generic? So having a good understanding of the business is a first, I think so, most foundation stage of anything you do. And if you don't align yourself with the business, we as accountants are always wired to think within a box. But the expectation from the business or the ground reality is always to think out of the box. And that's, I think so, is what we need to bring as an application of all our learnings and experiences. So one of the early, in one of my early experiences, I was told that when you speak to any of your business people, they are not technically qualified in terms of the accounting terms, right? So don't try to give them the accounting gyan. Try to give them and speak their language of, tell them in business, So if I tell, I had to make a debit and credit of something, people don't understand. But if I tell, hey, if you do this particular investment, it has an impact on the EBITDA, or it has an impact on the profitability of the organization. And in the long run, it's known to have a impact on your stakeholders' value creation. I think so that aligns with people much better. So I think so this sounds very simple, but to make an habitual transformation within yourself, to make it happen and apply in real life, is what is an important. Second, I would say, is also the fact that you need to be agile and learning. What I learned probably 30 years ago when I was pursuing my chartered accountancy, the fundamental foundation remains the same, but the environment around it and the context around which we have learned has changed substantially. So you need to constantly learn, understand. Technology was not even present. I didn't even know how to operate a mouse when I was doing articleship. And today we are working on a more than $1 billion size organization, and we are making investments, helping companies transform digitally, looking at their the technical evolution that is happening. And these are very, very important things for anyone to understand. So if you don't align yourself over a period of time, if you don't understand the technology, how it's evolving and how it's impacting, you will remain backdated. Third, I think so one important choice I made at a very early stage of my life was to remain being a generalist versus being a specialist. In a finance function, you can become a tax expert, you can become a receivables expert, you can become a controller, but those are very, very specialized functions. And I always felt that I was very close to the business, and so I tend to remain very generalist. I get probably bored very quickly with a monotonous job. So if somebody asks me to do a repetitive job again and again, probably I'm the misfit for it. So that, if you remain in that, probably, you get a little bit of a different spice, and every day is like a new day challenge. Whether by design or whether by destiny, I got thrown into many complex situations in handling the business and during my tenure. As I said, it was, and my only goal was to solve the problem. At the end of the day, as a part of the business, we are all here because there are problems. things are not perfect, and we as a professionals are expected to do what's right for the business. So all these put together are the sort of learnings that I have applied in my life, and have helped me sort of progress step by step. Every year is a learning. At age of my, after 30 years in my career, I still feel that I have a lot to learn. So that hunger for learning has not gone away, and I have probably another decade to go before I professionally sign off from a 9-to-5 job. And I want to ensure that I continue with my learning endeavor for even for the rest of my life.
Very interesting, your insights on as you look backward and even the forward vision of what you want to do and your hunger for learning. So I think it's really great to hear this from you. You also mentioned about change. I think especially in the current world, I think adapting to change, being agile is very important. And I think it all came to the forefront because of the pandemic. It disrupted everything that, the way we worked, the way we thought. And I realized that you joined Mindtree in the middle of the pandemic, right? So
Yes.
how did you sort of manage adapting to a new company, and what according to you was the most challenging part there?
Yeah, very interesting. Actually, when I decided to join, pandemic was on the doorstep, but we never thought that we will enter into such a unprecedented situation which we have never faced in our life. Initially, everybody's expectation was that it was a 1 month or 2 month scenario that we are all going to see it. But as the time passed, we all realized that was going to be a pretty long journey. And even after 18 months into this situation, we don't feel that we are still out of it. The danger has probably reduced, the risk has reduced, but it's still not up behind us. I would say, so I was, when I decided, as I said, the pandemic was not there. At one point of time, I questioned myself that am I doing the most stupid mistake of my life of making a change, because I don't know. I'm resigned already from one company. I don't know what's going to be the impact on the business of my new company. Obviously, the good part was it was backed by such a strong parent like L&T. We knew that the company had a strong foundation, so it was not that we were going to go into any worse situation. But as I started learning, the travel sector was the one which was contributing close to 20% at that point of time in terms of the revenue, and that almost more than 50% of that got wiped off overnight. So one of the big thing which was there is you are going to have a revenue loss. We were not very great, and we didn't have a great history in terms of our profit margins at that point of time. Liquidity was okay, I would say, not to the best that we would love it to be. And my first thoughts was, how can I make the company, take from a uncertain stage to a stabilized stage? So we focused on cutting down all the unwarranted expenditure. Though the good part was we didn't fire any single person. We honored all our commitments. We took people on board. We redeployed, retrained, and redeployed a lot of people who were working in the travel sector where the demand had depleted, and deployed it in the other sectors where the demand was there. And then we started ensuring that our collections happened in time, so that our cash position continues to improve. Cash, we used to call it as a king. Cash is king. We started saying that cash has probably become now the emperor, and whatnot. But cash was very, very important. So we ensured that our collections happened. And then the focus was to slowly define a chart of what comfortable profit trajectory you are. You were at a certain stage, you could have gone up. We got few natural tailwinds, like the office expenses, travel expenses were completely cut off. But then the inefficiencies in the system were very, very tightly managed. And we were able to move from a trajectory of around less than 15% EBITDA to a 20% EBITDA. And initially people thought it was a 1 quarter phenomenon, but now we have demonstrated that we have been able to make that sort of a growth and deliver that sort of a growth and profitability quarter on quarter. This is probably the 5th quarter whereby we are confident that we have been able to deliver a 20% EBITDA. We have sort of gone outside and made a very confident statement that we think that this is sustainable, and that anything above, we would like to invest back into the business. I think so. Initially, as I said, people didn't believe it, but eventually when the numbers started flowing quarter on quarter, the growth started coming back, the travel sector sort of stabilized. We were able to even do better than 20% in some quarters. And today, I would say, looking back, the biggest risk that you took in your life, probably at that point of time, probably started paying off. And again, going back to the first question which you asked, what made you sustain that? It's obviously the belief, then the understanding the business. I have spent almost now 21 years in the technology industry so you know the nuts and bolts very well. So you know where to press hard and where to sort of loosen up yourself. So that helped manage all of these things. And I think so for our stakeholders also, we created a significant value. And I joined on that day, I think so our market capitalization was around $2.2 billion. Today, I think so it stands closer to $11 billion in the last 18 months. So I think so this is a reflection of what all the hard work that has gone in the last 18 months. And I give a lot of credibility to my team who has been working seamlessly in making this happen.
Great. I mean, congratulations. It's absolutely fabulous growth story, especially during the pandemic, right, where things had come to a standstill. And just talking about the same thing, last year we saw the pandemic come and impact people and businesses. And then we had the second wave earlier this year, right? And I think that hit people more closely, right? In terms of at home, I think all families, somebody or the other was impacted. So as an organization, as Mindtree, what all did you do? And so what were you learning from last year that you thought you applied now? Because it came again, it was not expected when it did.
Yes. No, as I said, one of the sort of foundation of this organization is that we are a caring organization. Yes, the company comes first, the customers come even more on the top priority than the company, then our employees, and then we as individuals as on the part of the management. That's how we sort of sequence it. So when you think about your customers first approach, and then your company's brand and Mindtree Minds, as we call them, we started thinking about what could we do. So everybody was stuck at home. There were instances whereby many of our employees were stuck in certain locations where they couldn't have an access, they couldn't go out, there were not many grocery stores. So some of our people went and actually started distributing food to them on a regular basis. We were one of the early adopters of moving everybody on laptop environment. So for us to move from a office to home was relatively easy, but we did it very, very quickly and efficiently. As people started joining us on a virtual basis, we had to ship laptops. Earlier it was all centralized, and then we had to think about decentralizing it and ensuring that our minds get their laptops as early as possible. And we put a lot of engagement programs in this, and the engagement programs had a diversity. It was not only, there was some amount of learnings like master class series, which we did with a lot of leaders, global leaders who came and spoke about their experiences, journey. Then we were having a lot of counseling sessions that we did for our people because, sitting 24/7, one of the good part was we were working from home. The bad part was we virtually moved from a 12 hours to like a 24/7. Every day, because you didn't have anything to do. You were stuck in, so that started putting a lot of stress. So we did a few counseling sessions. And as the vaccination drive started picking up and the government started making announcements, a lot of people were thinking about, how can I do something for my employees and take certain tax advantages, or can I use it as a marketing tool to tell the people, that I did it as a part of my social responsibility. And for me, I think so we were very clear that we would like our people to be vaccinated and become less prone to the risk that was prevailing. We announced that we will sponsor it, and we did a lot of vaccination drives. Wherever it was not possible, we reimbursed those expenses, and we said that it was not with the intent of doing a social impact or something, but it was with our philosophy to go and that we care for our minds. For our customers, we launch, particularly in the travel sector, we launch a Help and Grow initiative. Some of the customers were under stress, so we helped them manage, give some discounts, give some extended credit terms, because this was not something anybody was trying to intentionally, default or delay on things. Good part, we didn't lose a single customer in this period. All these customers today, when they are in a sort of positive momentum, they are now looking at partnering with Mindtree, how we can help them in terms of doing the transformation. So I think the foundation of the purpose for which we are here, and the purpose of caring for people, caring for customers, caring for the society, all put together has helped us navigate this crisis relatively successfully in the last couple of quarters.
Great. So I see that the revenue for Mindtree has grown more than the industry average, and not now, but it's been over like that for the last 10 years now. What do you think is the differentiating factor between Mindtree and the others?
So I would say is that, as I said, there are many. This industry is now more than almost close to 3 decades old. And there are many players, large size, mid size, small size companies providing the services. But I think so what differentiates Mindtree is we were very clear. So when Debashish Chatterjee took over the reins of this company after the change in the management control, he laid down a very simple strategy of 4x4x4, saying that, I don't want to do everything. Mindtree was a digitally born company. Let's leverage on the strengths. Let's leverage on the capabilities, digital capabilities, and let's sort of go deep within the customer strategic relationships we had, rather than trying to get into 10 spaces and achieve nothing. So that strategy of being focused, not trying to do everything, but trying to do better in the things which you are good at, I think so has helped Mindtree as an organization. Secondly, we changed our approach from saying, we just don't want to be a top-line driven company. Our whole, one of the strategy was to be a profitable growth story. So we were very clear. There were certain relationships with our customers whereby they had a different, I would say, IT landscape than what we could offer. So those sort of clients, we sort of trimmed down our relationships and then focused on those strategic customers whereby we felt the opportunities have been unexplored. So today, in the last 24 months, we have reduced the number of customers from almost 360 plus to around 260 today. And if you look at our revenue per customer, that has substantially increased. We have then the third area also was we were earlier, doing a very sort of project specific work. And we didn't have those capabilities of going and selling to our customer end-to-end transformation deal, whether it's a consulting, the architecture, the development, the maintenance. We started stitching all the capabilities existed. We started doing the cross-skilling and cross-selling and stitching the solutions put together. Went to the customer, convinced it about our capabilities. And today, the result of all of these efforts is that this is the fifth quarter that we have shown a more than 5% quarter-on-quarter growth. And our last quarter was even more spectacular because we delivered around 12.7% growth in a quarter, which at some point of time for this industry was like an annual growth target. So this all efforts of a very, very conscious focus, areas of leveraging on the strengths rather than trying to be everywhere has helped the organization do very well in this.
So also realize that your liquidity is also very healthy and your DSOs have been coming down, though other companies have been struggling in the same sector. So how have you managed that?
So as I said, we were very clear when we engage with any customer. We have to be very clear with the customer, that they also understand the sense of what a liquidity means. So we are okay to have probably a little bit of a small bargain on our profitability, but we wanted to ensure that we are able to collect our money and there is a constant flow. So our deals were being structured. We have around 2/3 of our revenues which come in a fixed price format, whereby the monthly flow is not necessarily there. So we structured our milestones in such a fashion that there is a not too much interval in the two milestones, so the money keeps on flowing. The customers have been very, very receptive. As I said, there are many customers who are very, very clear in terms of ensuring that we have helped them in their troubled times. So they are very ready to sort of ensure that they don't penalize us on putting very stringent terms and conditions on payments. Yes, there are few customers whereby I think so because of our strategic relationship, we had to do a little bit more. But overall, I think so we are comfortable in the 60 days of DSO, which has been our sort of benchmark, and we feel that we should be able to sustain that plus minus here and there. So that this all efforts, our machinery of following up with the customers, ensuring that the money comes on those scheduled days has helped. There are very, very few escalations whereby I had to intervene and really write to a customer and make the request for payments to happen. It's all, I think so the machinery is very, very nicely oiled and greased to make the things happen.
So you mentioned about your 4x4x4 strategy. If you can share some more details about that.
Sure. So the 4x4 was we wanted to focus on 4 geographies. Prior to 2019, our focus was all on the North American region. While the North America is the largest market of IT globally, but Europe is equally a big market. And we didn't have a great presence there. Neither was it. We had a focus area in terms of. So what we did was, when we hired the new set of leadership, we sort of bought the people and ensured that the leadership is also scattered. We didn't want them to be positioned around in only one geography, because then the focus completely wrong. The second part is that Europe as a continent itself is also big. And what works in one country it's a very diverse continent that way. What works in UK doesn't work in Germany. What works in Germany doesn't work in the Nordics region. So you needed a little bit of even more focus on those geographies. So we brought a lot of people who are worked in those geographies and have been able to manage the relationships. Sometimes the localization or the local leader also helps in breaking the ice with the customers. When you have a local leadership present or a local office to showcase, the customers also feel more comfortable with you. So that was the focus. We did that. Number 2, we also bought the overall sort of sales organization who were under one leadership, executive leadership, which was not there earlier. It was more, everything was aligned to the CEO. So that also sort of helped us in terms of, so we have a vertical organization focusing on 4 verticals, and then we have the horizontal organization with the offerings who are doing the service offerings, and that again is very well cross-selling, cross-integrating the solutions, having a capability in one to be leveraged in others, success stories to be sold. All those things, those investments, I think so have been one of the biggest differentiator. Today, when we started, as I said, we didn't want it to be in everything. So we focused on digital. That's the customer success, data, analytics, which were the future, whereby the more trends of spending was happening. Cloud has become the mainstream, though, it continues to grow, and the pandemic has just accelerated it. The enterprise application, we had a strength in one area, but we wanted to ensure that we also are able to sort of provide a diverse experience in terms of the solutions in and around the backbone of those enterprise solutions. So all those things have sort of helped us in terms of managing the show. It does not mean we will restrict in ourselves in future to these 4 geographies or 4 industries, but we don't want to be in everything. So we started last year incubating the healthcare sector. And again, in the healthcare sector, we don't want right now to be focusing on the life sciences. We want only the technology part of it. In the beginning of this year, we made an acquisition on the next front, which is the Industry 4.0 solution, which was already there with our parent, very well implemented. And we were sort of already on the mainstream of going and selling it externally. So it was the right time for us to use it. And today we are seeing the great synergies of that solution being already integrated and being able to sell it to some of our customers. So this is just added. We have been slightly conservative on the M&A so far. Because we wanted to get into that consistent profitable trajectory. We wanted to have a strong liquidity with us, and now we are trying to go mainstream in terms of ensuring that we will do some amount of inorganic growth also. But inorganic growth is to be not just throwing money. It has to be a capability which is missing today, or a good customer penetration that we can do, or a good amount of geographical presence that we can acquire. So those are the focus areas in which we want the inorganic growth to happen, and we would like to do 1 or 2, but successfully integrate them within our organization. Otherwise, it all remains like a you and me sort of a thing, and the integration doesn't happen, the success doesn't come on your way. So these are all the factors of the 4x4x4 strategy that we have adopted so far.
Great. So you mentioned at the beginning about travel and hospitality getting impacted, and of course that's the sector which was worst impacted by the pandemic. So what is your outlook for that business, if you look at this year, in the next, let's say, couple of years, and which other sectors do you see doing really well to make up for that?
So travel, touchwood, the sector has bounced back very, very strongly. And if the pandemic sort of 3rd or 4th waves don't hit us as hard, we do believe that this sector will do very well in the next couple of years. We remain cautiously optimistic. As I said, the COVID is still not behind us, so we remain cautiously optimistic on this sector. But so far, the trends have been very, very encouraging. The second part on the travel sector is we are also now diversified and expanded the definition of a travel sector. Earlier, our focus was more on doing travel with the hospitality or the airlines. Those were our customer focus. But now we have expanded the landscape to even include certain portions of what you can call as a logistics and real estate management. So let's say we are talking about a warehouse and the supply chain analytics around it, or we are talking of a fleet management or a logistics management. Then there is a luxury segment which was completely uncovered was the cruises and all. So now we are also the airports. So the industries and the companies that we are now trying to bring in as a part of this whole sector is also quite expanding, and that's also helping us bounce back very, very quickly. So tomorrow, if any incident of the pandemic nature happens, or something, a black swan event happens, your entire sector doesn't get impacted. You have then some sectors whose dependency sometimes increases. As you saw, the logistics sectors took a very, very significant amount of jump in when nothing was working, because people wanted to ensure the supplies reach every pocket of the countries, and people are not. So that's one of the important part. The other sectors which we really did well during this period of time was the communications, media and technology sector, and then the retail and the consumer packaging sector. As I said, the supplies, the basic supplies like your grocery, etc., where every country, every individual on the earth wanted to ensure that their mom and pop stores in the corner have the supplies around. So these industries actually saw a big amount of boost. Communications, media, technology just took a big amount of booster dose because everything became virtual. Whether it was the meetings, whether it was the transactions, whether it was the audits, whether it was the, you name it, and everything started happening virtually. This was again unprecedented so the the platforms, the office dynamics, if you want to call it, all the tools that you use as part and parcel of your day to day, actually the demand just skyrocketed. And one of the things these companies needed to ensure during this period of time was to be agile, because they had these solutions, products, offerings, but they were not on a fast track of making it change to the customer's requirement. Today, you and me are sitting on a virtual platform, and it didn't have the virtual backgrounds. Virtual backgrounds became because people's homes were not necessarily designed. So this was a very quick, small change, which you can feel. The sound transparency that was needed to happen. The data consumption got a big boost. So a lot of people went on from those small data packs to all of a sudden the fiber links were very active. So these industries saw a big boost happening. Cloud, as I said, became the mainstream, because if you are not able to step out of your house, if you are on a cloud, then a lot of things are being taken care of by the service provider themselves. So that was the two industries that we thought that they did very, very well. Today, now, when I look at our other last segment, which was the banking and financial service sector, which was a little bit of a laggard. But in the last 2 quarters, that has also started seeing, we have been able to make a good amount of entry into the European market, the ASEAN market, and we have been having now good engagements with some of the largest global banks, whereby we believe this sector is also out of the tour. The whole concept of touchless and contactless, either it's a banking or a travel, everything took our front seat, and we just believe this is just a beginning, and we will see more and more changes in as you experience your products and services from these companies.
So that's really, again, very good to hear about the story of Mindtree, right? Even during one of the worst period that sort of impacted all of us globally. So now that things are looking really good, it's on a really doing well across all the businesses that you see. What do you think remains the top 3 risks for the business?
In today's world, I would say talent is the biggest risk. For us, we are in the people business, right? And talent has the availability of talent has really been a concern. We have seen the similar instances in the past, but the pace of the talent crunch happened was, I would say, is a real risk. Because today, if we are able to win with our sales machinery, we'll be able to get deals. But if we are not able to get the people to do the necessary job, then your delivery is going to get impacted. Though Mindtree as a company has done extremely well, we didn't have any delivery impacts because of COVID. We continue to attract talent, but the unprecedented demand that we have seen in this sector and the price at which it comes has really, I would say, is one of the day-to-day concern that we have to find out how to tackle it and manage it. The second remains is as we work in this remote and flexible environment, we want to ensure that, how do we take care of ourselves on the security risk, information security risk, whether it concerns the cyber security environment or whether it comes to the data protection. Data protection laws are very, very sensitive laws. Every country is coming out with its own jurisdiction to get aligned. We all understand what data protection means, but to habitually change yourself and ensure that you don't miss on anything is another risk which I feel, because most of the instances on the information security breach can happen just unconsciously. You're not going to intentionally go and sort of spill the data for any vested benefits, but it can happen as a part and parcel. So that habitual change in such a large environment, driving down, educating people, continuously training them, keeping them aware of what changes are coming in is a massive task. And any breach can obviously, I'm less worried on the financial side of it, but more on the reputational side of it, any such incidents is going wrong. And the third part is we also have to think about, our how do we have successfully migrated from office to home, but now as the things open up, it's not going to be easy for us to bring back the people to office again. We are very clear we are not going to be having a 100% office environment anymore. We will work in a flexible remote delivery working model. There will be certain set of people whereby sensitive data and sensitive operations are being managed. Those people may need to come office full time, while on the other hand, there can be certain set of people and jobs that can be permanently done from home. But the majority of the population is going to fall into that flexible format. So who gets how to prioritize it, how to roster it, it's all new things that are coming in. Technology is definitely going to help us in terms of managing that thing, but the habitual change around the people, I think so, will be an important task for us to do it. Last, I would also add the fact that as the overall climate changes are impacting the globe, environment, social responsibility and governance is also taking a big amount of front seat. We as an organization have been doing a fantastic job on social responsibility, environment, as well as governance. But it's till now it was all outcome and sort of telling what you have done. Now what ESG brings on the table is tell what you will be 5 years or 10 years from now, and you have to then act on it and show progress. This is going to be far different than just telling what you have done. So that, I think so, is one of the important things. So to adapt to that, make those investments and stick to those commitments is going to be another important factor about how we adapt and make it happen.
You touched about data privacy and data protection. I just wanted to understand a little more about how are you monitoring that, because as you rightly said, the reputational risk from that is very, very high. So how do you manage your entire data?
So we on the two parts, I think so, on the data protection part of it, or the I would say the IT environment part of it, we have strengthened ourselves. There is no foolproof or a perfect solution. What you can do is always ensure that everything your environment is having the latest amount of tools and softwares to monitor the things. Your red flags are very quickly observed. A 24/7 set of people constantly work and observe those data points, ensure that any loopholes are plugged in as quickly as possible. And most important is being proactive versus reactive. This is going to be the important strategy. On the data privacy or a data protection is concerned, I think so educating people is one of the important things that we are doing, because we have designed a lot of programs. We sent out constant communication. We have made few mandatory training courses. As a part of the induction, as the people joined virtually, we have ensured that people are constantly and then the incidences, how do you manage the incidences? If you are able to spot a data failure or a data breach, and how are you taking proactive steps? Are you proactive with your customers in terms of the communication? A customer is more receptive to you and will have a higher respect for you if you are proactive in telling what has gone wrong, rather than a customer telling you that something went wrong from your side. So I think so these are all collective efforts that are doing. This is an evolving area, and I would say being alert and constantly trying to stay ahead of the game is only going to help you in terms of managing this risk.
So as you look forward from your Vineet, what do you see are the larger opportunities that you see available? And also from that, looking at the competitive landscape, right? What is your forward looking? How will the organization be? Any thoughts on that?
So let me take the second question first. We took 2 decades for us to reach $1 billion mark. We as an organization, with the positioning that we have done, definitely don't want another decade to go for the next billion to come. We are very, very aggressive in terms of, and very, very hungry in terms of ensuring that you get your growth pace is much, much faster than what you have been. Ideally, we should have been a bigger size organization by this time. But so now we are catching up. So our catching up will be definitely now. As you do that, you need to ensure that your whole ecosystem also moves. It's like trying to move the entire elephant in the room, right? So you can't just make his front leg move or a back tail move. You have to make the whole. So that's the, I would say, the biggest change that we are doing. We are trying to automate and upgrade on a lot of our internal systems. That's another priority, because if the technology takes care of your routine tactical task of it, and the decision and the simplicity comes in, you can focus on the more strategic areas. Otherwise, you get catch into those tactical areas and things never work. Coming to your first question on the areas and opportunities, I think so multiple. The technology is, it's the people who are hungry about it, who want to learn. Technology is one thing which is constantly evolving. What we saw in the last 20 years, you are going to see probably a 10 times or 100 times faster change that's going to happen in the next 5 years. Some of the, I would say, dynamics or some of the technological innovations you saw in some of these science fiction movies, probably you're going to see it in the reality in the next couple of years. And that's, I think so, excites us. I can name multiple technologies which are part and parcel of our study, whereby we've worked, whereby we are doing proofs of concepts. But eventually I can't name it, because what may be relevant today may not be relevant 2 years from now, or whatever is relevant even 2 years from now may have got commoditized by that time. So there is no end to it. We as an organization constantly keep on looking at those few technologies. What are the trends that are coming? We are working with a lot of analyst community across the globe who tells us what are the trends coming in. We have our customers who are telling us what trends they see. So we work in collaboration with multiple institutions together to identify what are the pockets whereby our investment should flow in, and that sort of triggers us to ensure that we are always ahead of the game and not catching up on the game.
So this is a very interesting visualization, examples that you use. So it's really interesting that you're thinking and working around these lines at Mindtree. So one question being, again, from a data and analytics question, a company I can't, but ask, is that how are you looking at data and analytics within your organization and using it for your growth?
So today, let me say that with the growth and the pace at which the changes around things are happening, the span of attention any executive can give is always going to be limited. So I keep on getting daily probably 100 things that I need to focus on, and everything is like a priority. Now, how do you make a decision if you have to go through each and every line and every point? One, obviously, you need a good team below you who does a lot of your job, with whom you know what exactly to expect. The second is give a very pointed sort of, understanding. So like, for example, we have our monthly review of our financials, but I can't expect my management to go through every line. I have to tell them what are the good areas whereby our results are sort of delivering, but also the areas whereby I would say which are potential, the areas of concern, or whereby the efficiency is not as high as that. So we are now trying to get into those analytics. We have already made changes, but we have to make it more automated. My wish list is still to move from a laggard, which is a month-end sort of a model, to a real-time model. And as you sort of, someone like me or my boss, so when he signs up in the morning, he should have a sort of a electronic cockpit giving him the key parameters to sort of know the vital, how the vital organization parameters of the health of the organization are. And that will, I think so, be a very, very big differentiator, because then I don't need to wait for the month. I know exactly where I'm heading, and then the difference is just the fine-tuning part of it. So that's the data analytics, I would say, we are trying to introduce in our organization. We have to make a lot of investment into changing our internal systems. We have not been that is one area which is a sort of a work in progress for us, and it will take some time before we reach the true stage of how data sort of tells me to focus only on the areas where my focus should be, rather than trying to scatter around. And we are also trying to ensure that the data also comes in time. As I said, moving away from that laggard model of saying what happens at the end of the month, how can I predict? Moving from a reactive to proactive, more to prescriptive, is what the change that we are trying to drive down.
Great. Thanks. Thank you so much for your time. One last question, Vineet, is that what would you say, what would be a few words for the upcoming CFOs?
uh, it just goes into the same thing which I probably told at the beginning. I think so. Change is going to be the constant part of your life. You are going to enter the area, whichever industry you work. Technology is going to be a critical part and parcel of your environment. So don't ignore technology. It's not only if you work with an IT company you need to work. Even if you work for a construction, a brick and mortar company, that will also need technology at the back end. So stay very close to technology and understanding your business. That's the fundamental foundation of any success that comes. Two, I would say, don't make job changes, make career changes. Many times it's a very thin line difference between what is a job change and a career change. Always look out for more responsibilities, more learnings. Be hungry, even if it's not you don't need to be an expert in everything, but as far as you have a good knowledge and if you are able to apply that knowledge, that helps us. Third, be humble. If whatever academic qualifications you are entering in, it's only an entry advantage to you. After that, it's a plain competition across all the people. So don't get overwhelmed with your academic qualifications. After a point of time, it's going to be the real business alignment and business understanding that's going to drive down your success part of it.
Thank you so much. I think it was indeed pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time, Vineet. Bye.
Thank you. It's a pleasure, and stay safe and sound till we meet in person.
Yes, absolutely. You too. Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.